Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the next edition of Monday Madness featuring the authors of Lineage Independent Publishing. My name is Michael Hurd, and I am the owner, chief editor, and jack of all trades for our very small independent publishing company. With me today are Lorna Hart, our newest author, who has just joined us in the past month or so. Patricia Donahue, who writes under the nom de plume of G.B. Carmichael, and Lisa Talbot. All of us are in the process of coming up with some new works, and our fifth author, Rebecca Conity Bruce, is apparently having technical difficulties. Her most recent novel went live in ebook format on Friday and goes live in paperback on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow. Her new book is entitled Five Spirits in the Room. So with that, what I want to spend the next however long, half an hour to an hour talking about what we're doing. And I think we're all prepared to read extracts from our books. So Lorna, since you're the new kid on the block, would you like to start?
Oh, thanks, Mike. I will, quite happily. This is a prologue to my book, and I think it's something that I've worked on so much. I think that it's the bit I like the best, probably. So I'll read that now.
Okay.
Moon Path is the name of the book. I'm not very good at reading aloud, so bear with me. Under the light of a full moon, the city of Beirut lay sleeping. A taxi drove through the fringes of the city and turned north along the coast road, following the contours of the rocky shoreline. Along the coast, the rocky hillsides bit like jagged teeth into the land, which rose sharply upwards to the foothills of the mountains, black against the starry sky. The night was calm and quiet. The only sounds to be heard, apart from the engine of the elderly taxi, were the hiss and suck of the sea on the pebbled shore and the soulful Arabic love songs playing quietly on the car radio. As the car motored along, the moon seemed to be moving in the same direction, almost as if it were curious to know who travelled so late in the night. The moonlight was cool, but so bright it almost seemed to radiate warmth. Two men sat in the front seats of the car, chain smoking and occasionally exchanging a word or two. In the usual fashion of Lebanese taxis, the interior of the cab was ornately decorated with fringes and the occasional dusty ostrich feather. Its ancient springs seemed to sway in time to the music. In the rear sat a little girl, her cheek pressed against the cracked leather upholstery that smelt faintly of sweat, perfume, and 1,000 other faint reminders of previous travellers. The girl leaned back against a small woman, dressed in shabby black clothes, whose head nodded sleepily. The man in the passenger seat turned and looked back at the old woman and the child. His cold eyes lingered over the child speculatively in a way which troubled her. She dropped her gaze and snuggled closer to the woman, and eventually the man turned to look at the road ahead. The child lifted her eyes and gazed at the moon as it appeared to race alongside, parallel to them, dropping a glittering path over the restless sea. She had lived in the city all her short life and had seen glimpses of the sea shimmering over the rooftops, but she had never been to the seashore. She was astonished to see how huge the sea was, As they left the city and driven into the countryside, it had surprised her to see the land on either side of the road almost devoid of buildings. They travelled through a harsh, rocky landscape, softened in places by areas of lush vegetation, palm trees and spiky patches of plants. Occasionally the lights of small villages flickered through the vegetation. Beside the road lay small fields sown with crops in orderly rows. The little girl was tired and confused, but soon, soothed by the moonlight, the music, and the warm comfort of the woman's body, she fell deeply asleep.
Can't wait to read that book.
The visual images that you painted, Lorna, as you were talking about the description of the coast of Lebanon, I could visualize that.
Yeah, well, I have been there, and I lived in a little village outside the city, so I knew what it looked like driving along at night. It was just like that. The moon seemed to be following you as you drove along.
Right.
And all the vegetation there was strange and spiky in a lot of places. But there were places where it was lush and there was little farms and the way the mountains rose up behind all along Lebanon, they were just like at night, like black jagged rocks, very steep mountains. So yeah, I did have personal experience.
Well, it's going to be, well, what did I suggest? Sometime in August when we're going to have that book out finally. So I'm looking forward to editing it. Just knowing what was in the prologue.
All right. Well, good. I hope you do enjoy it.
I hope our readers will too.
Mike, there's an echo on your transmission. When you speak, there's an echo to what you say that makes it very hard to hear.
Okay. I'm going to leave the studio and come right back in again. So while I'm doing that, does anybody have any questions for Lorna, both from the other four of us or from online?
Anybody?
I'm waiting to see if somebody online comes up with anything, but because we don't know what the book is actually about, I'm interested to see what the plot is, because I like the idea of it being in the Lebanon because it's a very tumultuous place.
Well, it starts off there, but it's not really involved in the history of the Lebanon to any degree.
No. Okay.
Well, the time I was there was a short period of I suppose a year or two between wars. So before the big wars that happened after I left, before that it was a Christian city, a Christian country, and a lot of the people were, Arabic girls went round in tiny mini skirts and drank alcohol, and youngsters went to nightclubs and things. It was a very different place afterward, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It became very repressed, but you did have to mind your P's and Q's there,
That's very similar to Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
There was a slight feeling of danger all the time, even though it wasn't around you in any degree, but you felt that you had to mind your P's and Q's in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Mike, I've just had a message from Lisa. She said she's going to have to lock out because she can't hear it properly. There's so much delay for her that she's not hearing it properly at all. So she's dropped out.
Okay, well, she's trying to come back in. Is my echo gone now?
Yes, your echo's gone. Well,
okay. All right, cool. All right, so we're...
Lisa.
we're all sort of here, at least we're trying to be. So let's shift gears for a second and go on to Rebecca and her new release. Her new book, Five Spirits in the Room, went live in ebook format on Friday, and will be going out in paperback on Wednesday. Rebecca, did you have an excerpt from that book that you wanted to read?
No, I don't want to read anything. I got a picture.
Okay.
Does that start? No, I just
That was
wanted
on
to
the
say
front
that
of the
it's
screen.
Yeah, I can bring it up in a screen share. Just hang on just a second.
okay.
All right, that didn't work.
It was trying to work, but
All right, it keeps not cooperating. All right. Anyway, go ahead and hold it up then.
it's okay. I don't need to hold it. I just wanted to show it.
Yeah, okay.
But I can't wait for it to come out. It has been something that I've been working on for a very long time. Here, I'll put it in front of my face. How's that?
There you go.
Okay, that's good enough. Yeah, the ebook is live everywhere, Amazon, everywhere, and the paperback's coming out July 13th. Went through real smooth. I'm really happy about it. And Mike wrote the foreword. I don't know what else to say. I don't really want to read from it because it's coming out.
Okay.
I started reading it last night.
Did you? Did you get it on
And I
ebook?
can't wait to get back. Yeah. Yes.
I know it'll
And
make
I
you
said
laugh.
tonight
It'll make
before
you cry.
joined us that I was loving what I was reading, and his foreword was beautiful.
What's it about,
Yes.
Rebecca?
Sorry?
I don't know how to explain what it's about.
What's it about?
I was saying I had all this planned in my head, and now I had technical difficulties getting on, and everything has left me. Can Mike say anything? I don't know what to say. Let me think.
Why don't you cue on the concept of angel parents?
Okay. Yes, it does have a lot to do with angel parents, but it's not in no way is it a self-help book or, a guide, but it does go through the 5 stages of grief. And a man that has lost his own child starts a group when he discovers that one question is the gnawing question in his mind when it comes to dealing with the grief. So he decides to handpick a group and start a group session with them and to help them go through the grief. And angel parents are parents that have lost a child, like an adult child or a small child. It could be any child. So it's, any age child, and he helps them deal with it.
All right.
But it has, it has comedy in it. It has, seriousness in it. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, once I got started editing it, it was very difficult to stop. I mean, what was it? Maybe a week that it took me to get through the entire book.
Right.
So it's to me it was a compelling read.
And it's fiction, is it?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
It is fictional. It's although I do have several. It's amazing how many friends I have that have gone through such great loss, and I was thinking of them when I was writing it. But it's not necessarily about any of them in particular.
All
But
right.
that you don't want to ever have to go through, and it's hard to imagine, but you know,
Well,
it's like a
myself.
fictional fantasy way to go to learn how to read about the grief that parents go through.
Okay.
I think that's a tricky subject to write about.
It is.
And I've got to say, I applaud your bravery at tackling something like that. Because it's not an easy thing to talk about.
I tried to humor it.
No, there were some funny bits in it. There were some spots that had me chuckling, and there were other spots that let's just put it this way, I had to walk away from for a few minutes and then come back to them.
Wow.
Right.
So, but it was a very, very, very interesting, very compelling read, even from an editorial standpoint.
Right.
So,
Right.
all right. Does anybody have any questions for Rebecca? I know we've only got one viewer right at the moment, but I'm hoping other people will watch this offline. I mean, it is only lunchtime here in the United States. It's evening meal time in Europe. So, it's not surprising that our viewership is down, at least on the U.S. side. So
I think I asked all the questions I wanted to about Rebecca's book when we had the last conflab.
okay.
Right.
All right. Rebecca, I'm sorry, Pat, did you have something you wanted to read from either of your two already published books, or anything coming out?
No, this has got, it hasn't been published. It's only been written a week, but it's just a flavour of the different things that I write about, because I can't ever say that my genre is just military, because it's not. It murder, crime, other things, love, loss, and this was just the title that we were given at the book club, and the book club appreciated it, so I thought I'd share it with you. It's called Bigfoot. Bigfoot had earned kudos from his nickname in 1969 in Vietnam, where he'd been detailed as a scout. From the Navajo tribe, he could track anything and not leave anything to be tracked by. It had been another hot, humid day. Every bit of his rotting uniform was wet. In fact, he was wet. His clothes were wet, his socks and boots were wet, and he was scared. Just before sundown, he was, as usual, out ahead of his troop, when a unit of Viet Cong had passed and was now between him and his comrades. He'd hidden in the only optional cover that might save him. He'd crawled into the foul, stinking carcass of a water buffalo. The stench, he hoped, would deter any of the gooks from getting too close and discovering him. His name was really Aaron Snow Eagle. He was the son of a Navajo brave and a white woman. His father, Ascii, and Irish Catholic mother, Bridget, were married in the late 40s. His father could boast he'd served with the Marines on Iwo Jima. Ascii was a wind talker. Aaron was proud of his heritage on both sides. His Irish great-grandfather had taken part in the Easter Uprising in Dublin, the aftermath of which had sent his family to the first boat heading to Boston and the USA. There they would find comfort and support from family and the Irish community there. Aaron was born in the time of melting snow, the spring of 1950. Outside their small farmstead home, his father offered his newborn son up to the face of the Great Father Wakantanka for blessings. Swooping down to grasp a rabbit caught out in the open was a snow eagle. His father knew this to be an auspicious sign, for it was how his ancestors had coined their family name, or so the story went. His father insisted always that it was a great omen for his son. Aaron grew tall like the trees and lean, but muscular legs and large hands and feet. To be perfectly accurate, his nickname was bestowed on him when he'd been called up on his first day at basic training. Having finally reached the counter, the quartermaster at Fort Bragg had looked him up and down and whistled. He then disappeared to the back of the stores. To Greenhorn Aaron, the wait felt like it went on for ages. When the quartermaster returned, he slapped a set of boots on the counter and joked, "These are Sasquatch's spare pair." The rest of Aaron's units heard the jibe, and forever after, he was Bigfoot. Aaron held his breath, closed his eyes so that he could see only through his long dark eyelashes. The wiry, short-statured Viet Cong soldiers filed past. He let his breath out softly and waited for about 5 minutes. He then rolled out of his foul, embryonic sack of safety. The river was about 20 feet away. He belly crawled like he'd learnt from his father as a boy and had revisited the art in his basic training. He slid into the river's cool, refreshing flow. He needed to get back to his unit and fast. They could get caught out by the unexpected arrival of Cong troops. Intel had said that they were in a free zone. Clearly, the intel was off. It was dark now. His friends would have made camp and be expecting him back, but he could not risk encountering the gooks again, so he found a good bit of cover off the track and waited for daylight. He watched the sun begin its ascent and marveled at the beauty of Mother Earth. He began to hide his tracks as he made his way back to his comrades. The enemy must find nothing to give him away. He spent about an hour slowly scouting round and erasing anything that showed a US Marine had passed that way. Suddenly, he heard a twig snap. He slowly lowered himself on his belly into the thick of the undergrowth. The sounds he then heard suggested a group of 5 or 6 men were moving ever closer. Aaron was not afraid to die. No Navajo man is. He knows his spirit will join his ancestors. But by the same token, he was not yet ready to sing in the lodges of his forebears. Just then, he heard a voice he recognized. It's got to be him. No gook has feet that size. It was his sergeant. Aaron slowly raised his hand and said, "I'm here." Sergeant Bill Raging Bull Taylor laughed. "We lost you just before dark, then almost immediately saw multiple signs of Charlie, so we laid low till first light and came looking. Thank God for those big feet. We found one half print by the river almost inside that stinking carcass. We knew then that's where you'd taken cover. You and those size 15 boots are legend." They all laughed. That's it.
Really good.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank you, Mark.
again, very descriptive. I mean,
Very
I could feel myself there.
I was getting hotter as I read it. But one of the ladies in my writers group she's been with me since the beginning of me starting to do any writing, and she has seen the growth. And the last lot of stuff that I've done, she said to me, "Pat, you've moved into a completely different level." So I thought I'd share that one.
And I would agree with her.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think writing groups are quite helpful, actually, to get feedback from other people.
Yeah.
And also, if somebody writes something really, really good, you think to yourself, "Ooh, I've got to do better next time."
Exactly. And the best part of this group is that they will say to you, that first part or that middle bit was brilliant, but the other bit, I needed more from it to follow or whatever. So you kind of get to know what your good bits are and what you have to work on. And I've started to learn how to still stay concise, but write longer pieces, if that makes sense. Because I tend to write very sort of compact stories. And so having to write 50,000 words was a trial and a half. So I'm beginning to learn to write something that is longer, but still as concise. It's not wasted words.
The last time
I'm loving Sandy's comment. Anytime you want to send the ticket, hon.
When we hit the New York Times bestseller list, or one of us does, then we can all get together.
Yeah.
We might be able to
We
afford it.
we'll demand when the one that gets there sort of goes big, we demand all our co-authors meet up in person in New York to meet the TV or the film cameras that want to tell us.
I was thinking we'd all just go to Lisa's place and invade Lisa's place in Portugal.
No, it's bloody 42 there. I'm not going to that hot.
I meant in the wintertime, when it's bloody cold over there on the Channel Coast.
Spring and autumn are the best times to go there. The spring is wonderful, perfect. Winter is a bit cold, actually. Not outside, cold in the houses. Because they're only usually single walled houses, so
yeah, they're not built for cold weather, are they?
No, not at all. They are now. Modern houses are. They have to be built to a different standard, but the old houses are, in winter, they're freezing, absolutely freezing. I used to wear most of my clothes in one go and a shawl on my neck. And having a shower was torture. In a cold bathroom.
Can't hear you, Rebecca. I saw your mouth move, but I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you.
I might be muted.
No, you're good.
I don't know.
That's it. That was good.
Okay.
But I still don't know what you said.
I was just saying that it's hot here. I don't understand. I think New York would be much cooler.
Good.
Also be a lot more expensive. We couldn't even get hotel rooms in New York for probably less than $400 a night.
Really?
Really? New York is terribly expensive.
Oh my God.
It'd be worse than trying to stay in London.
We have to stay outside the city and then just travel in during the day.
Yeah.
It's many years since I went there. I think it's about 40 years since I was in New York. I didn't like it then. I didn't like it. There's so much traffic, and
I was there in March.
The smells that came up from the sewers and well, people are kind of brusque and not very friendly.
How many years ago was that? How many years ago?
I'm trying to remember the last time I was in New York. It must be 50 years ago.
Yeah, maybe so.
So you were just a toddler then?
No, I wasn't a toddler. My daughter was. My daughter was about 2, I think. So yeah, it's more than 50 years ago. We were on the Ed Sullivan Show, actually.
That is going back a few years.
Yeah, we went on it 4 times, actually. They seem to have a sort of a yearly diary of who'd been on before, and they'd ring you up. And we always seem to be there about the time of, what is the day that the Irish celebrate with?
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, that was it. We always seem to be there around St. Patrick's Day.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I was.
I tell you what, New York wouldn't take Rebecca and I on Patrick's Day.
Why?
We'd probably get escorted out. I've got a question for...
It used to amuse me.
So hang on a minute. Lorna, hang on a minute. Rebecca was trying to speak there. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm having such technical difficulties. But I said I was just there in New York in March. I went to a show, stay with my daughter. We always stay in Connecticut and go into the city for the day. We take the 8:15 into the city. We take the train into the city. So yeah, I go there at least once or twice a year. That's all I was saying. That's it.
It-
It's wonderful.
I
It's
just didn't
beautiful.
want, because you're so quiet, I didn't want you to get missed.
Very quiet. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute, Rebecca. Not a
Oh,
chance.
I'm an introvert. I really don't like any of this. It's fine. I'm fine.
I've got a question for all three of you authors.
Okay.
If you were to pick a question that you wanted someone to ask you about the book that you are about to publish or have just published, Rebecca, what would that question be?
Oh,
That's a good question. I don't like people to ask me what's it about, because then I go, okay, do I tell them the good part, or I tell them that, I like them to say things like, what genre, or, does it have a twist at the end, or something, pertaining to the actual writing. So I guess that's what it is. That would be for me.
So you want them to ask general questions that opens up the genre and
Right.
the style, but not the specifics.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain what the book is about. I know what it's about in my head, but my books usually have a beginning and then a peak at the middle, a climax, and then, it goes to the end, and then there's always a twist at the end. It seems like that's how I write every book. So I always think, what part do I put in the foreground? What part would I talk about to explain the book? I always have difficulty with that. I just write. I write from beginning to end. I don't write it. I don't have an outline. I just write from beginning to end. So it's crazy the way my brain works,
You're what we call a pantser. You write by the seat of your pants.
yeah.
Most of us
I am
in
too.
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
I think I am
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I think all of us are.
And but the opposite of that is what they call a plotter. Somebody that has to outline the entire book and have sticky notes with that they put in chronological sequence. Yeah. I can't write like that. Not anymore anymore.
I can't.
When I was writing for the federal government, yes, I would have to do that because I would have to follow a rigid, prescribed format.
I think the only planning I did was I wanted the murderer of one of the characters to be unmasked or get his justice at the end. And so I just had that in for my mind all the time. But I didn't know until I'd actually got right to the last two chapters how I was going to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it did.
So Sandy asked a question. She said, how do your stories evolve, and how do you choose and or decide on a topic? I can go first with that one. I mean, my stories evolve based on the history that's around them. When you're writing historical fiction, you kind of have to stay true to the period you're writing about. Yeah. And then, choosing that topic, it's wherever my interest takes me. I'm using my first book, which was 13 chapters and set in different periods in time. Each one of those was set up to be able to be a full-length novel. And I just decide what I want to research next. And if I haven't written about it already, then I go ahead and move on with it. In my book number 8 that I'm working on right now, called Ground Faults, which I've got an extract to read here in a bit, that particular book may or may not actually be part of the series. It may be a standalone work, and I think I found a way that it will tie into the series. So, Rebecca, go ahead.
I said I vote standalone. Sorry.
Oh my God, I can hear you clearly, Rebecca. Whatever you did, don't move it.
I didn't do anything. Yeah, I vote that his book is standalone, but it's up to him. I was just giving him a hard time. Yeah, my stories come to me in dreams. I'm a weirdo, but yeah, I dream about it. Or somebody talks about a subject, like I meet with my friends. I've known these people for all my life, some of them since I was 10 and 13. And they talk about something, or something affects them. And so then it's on my mind all the time. I'm one of those that has to try to solve an issue every time I find an issue. And, so then I dream about it, and then I write about it. So That's my quirkiness.
Mm-hmm.
How else they evolve.
Yeah, I often get ideas for short stories in dreams, but I didn't dream the 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 story of Moonpath because it was based on a little beggar girl that I saw in the street in 1969, and she was so adorable. I wanted to take her home with me, but I imagined what sort of life she would be having, and because she didn't look Arabic, I imagined the story around the fact that she wasn't Arabic, although she was living with them. You know what I mean? So it was this little girl in the street that triggered the whole thing off.
Mm-hmm.
I often
Wow.
wondered what, where her life probably was horrendous. Really, couldn't have been anything else. She was so poor.
Yeah.
So, poor little thing.
So Lorna, just out of curiosity, do you think you have another book in you somewhere?
I'm mulling two at the moment.
Good for you.
But one of them is fiction, but based on my experiences with a narcissistic sociopath. But I want it to be funny, but quite darkly funny in places. And the other one was suggested to me by some of my friends because I had such a mad life being married to a magician for 23 years. But I'm writing a series of vignettes about things that happened or places that I went to. Like, for instance, I'm writing at the moment about my first experience of Las Vegas in the gangster times, in 1964 it was, when Las Vegas was a fantastic place. And the shows are fantastic and the restaurants are fantastic. And the gangsters were so good at running the place. Although I don't like to think about all the people who ended up out in the desert, or in Lake Tahoe. That's where they're finding them right now, aren't they?
You could write a murder mystery on that. It sounds like.
I could do,
Yeah.
but the story that I'm writing is non-fiction, and it's about things that happened in my life. A lot of them were very funny, especially with the animals that we had in our we had 4 dogs, and I could write a book about the 4 dogs all on my own because they did such.
So your stories evolve from your life. That's good.
Pardon?
I said your stories evolve from exciting life. Your stories evolve from your exciting life.
This is true, yeah. I mean, I used a lot of the experiences of places that I'd been to in Moonpath, and I'd used up quite a lot of them, actually. So I think I'd have to do research on another book,
I have no idea where my books come from.
Do you not?
No, it'll be a phrase. I think I've said before that Canongate to Cannon Shell started out with listening to Irish rebel songs and thinking, who is this man that they're singing about? And looking up who he was. And it turned out that he lived 3 doors away from my great-grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And the story just went.
Well, that's sort of like My Little Beggar Girl, isn't it?
Yeah.
She
And
was trigger, but
again.
the story went completely off into different places.
Yeah. And We Meet Again was a title from the writers group.
All right.
And you've got We Meet Again, at least in the back of your mind, as your next novel, right?
Yeah, well, there's 11,000 words already written. I've just got to do more of that weaving in between the pillars to fill it in.
It is your next novel.
It is my next. Well, yes, it's my next novel, but the children's book is the one that I'd like to get done first, just in case I don't make it to the end of the novel.
Why wouldn't you do that?
Sorry?
Why would you say that?
Why would you say you won't make it to the end?
Well, I just don't want to take the chance that with the way that my body is falling apart, that I don't get to finish the children's book for them before I peg it.
Oh, well, I guess I know how that is.
That's about the fairies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little side comment here, Pat. Don't try to write the children's book when you're doing heavy drugs.
No.
Those fairies are
Although, if I'm talking about fairies, it might actually be quite conducive.
well, they could be psychedelic fairies.
Well, yeah, but the fairy book is written. I'm trying to do the drawings that they did and make them work in the book, but also keeping it so that when I send it all to you, you can actually use them without it ruining the book cover and things like that. And also I need to talk to you because I'd like to do some of the images in color.
Yeah, we'll talk about that offline because that adds another dimension to things.
Yeah, it's another thing. But Rebecca told me that what she would like people to ask, but you didn't, and neither did Lorna.
No, I would like people to ask me what inspired me to write the book.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
The unfortunate answer to that is that I end up going on for hours.
Well, so do I, actually. I was in a cafe with somebody the other day she asked me about it, and by the time we left, she got to about chapter 20, I think. But she was all enthusiastic about the story. She can't wait to read it. It was her that suggested My Life might make a good book as well. Because it was a bit weird. It looks to me on Facebook, if Lisa's trying to message me, I don't want to go off in case I lose.
Yeah, Lisa just asked us to join her on Messenger after we're done.
All right, okay.
So we can all meet up there afterwards. So the three of you have already read extracts from your book. Well, I should say two of you have, and the other one didn't. But I suppose I ought to join the fray too and read a little bit from my upcoming work called Ground Calls.
You do. You can't get away from it.
No, I can't. I mean, if I'm running this show, to take the rest of them.
You broke up there, Mike, and you've frozen.
Yeah.
Am I better now?
Rebecca, can you tip your screen down a little bit? Because it's like you're peeping over the edge of your screen.
Yeah, you. Move your camera down a little bit.
I just have to sit up. I'm laying back.
That works too. We're seeing you from your nose up.
Maybe you should sit on a cushion.
There you go.
That's a bit better.
That's a little better.
The thing is, your name is right through the side of your face, so it comes across like that and stops about there.
When my daughter does that, when we're FaceTiming, or Skyping, I always say, "You look like Chad." Do you know who Chad is?
I do. I know Chad. Fingers on the wall and the nose.
What no cheese in the world, wasn't it? Right, okay, you're right. You're reading then.
Yes,
Mike.
I am. So anyway, this little extract is from chapter 6 of my work in progress called Ground Falls. Now, just as a little bit of a historical perspective, the story is set in the 1905 to 1920 timeframe when parts of the United States were just getting electricity.
All right.
Okay, and the electricians of the day had to start from square one, bringing electricity into the homes and businesses that they were working from. But what was happening was that most of the places were basically the rich and famous who could afford to have their homes electrified. So we're at one family summer home. Right? The Frankel summer home's layout was more complex than most, so it took Sparky longer than usual to bring electricity to every room. Mr. Frankel insisted that the servants' quarters be wired as well. He wanted his servants to be happy, even when they were away from the main house in town. They were, after all, entitled to some leisure time at the summer home, Frankel was fond of saying. It didn't matter to him that the servants were on call 24 hours a day and likely would not engage in any leisure pursuit other than sleeping or bedtime reading. Sparky took extra care with planning the wiring of the servants' quarters. He felt they were entitled to the same quality service as the rest of the Frankel homes. Electricity, Sparky knew, was the way of the future, and he could envision many labor-saving devices that would make the plight of those in service easier. At the Frankel summer home, the servants were generally housed 2 to a room, except for the major domo and head housekeeper, right, who had their own rooms, which, oh crap, my screen just jumped here. Who had their own rooms which doubled as offices. The other 8 servants, 4 of each gender, were responsible for the care of the lady of the house and the children around the clock. The rest of the servants, including a chauffeur, always remained behind at the mansion in town to care for Mr. Frankel and sometimes his mistress, who would visit when Mrs. Adelaide Frankel and the children were away. Right? And then it goes on from there, talking about the children and how demanding they were of the servants. And you know,
I love the oh crap.
That was not in the text. That should have been like in the Nixon era, expletive deleted.
Well, I did figure out that it wasn't part of the text, but it was just brilliant that you just dropped it without realizing.
It was purely spontaneous. So anyway, not as deep and descriptive as the other 2, but at the same time, it was an extract out of the middle of the storyline.
It was extremely descriptive.
You think so?
Yeah. Yes. I know
It
a
must
lot about how the
be
servants were
amazing.
laid out and who their responsibilities were.
Because Frankel was a rich dude.
A rich dude?
You've gone quiet again, Rebecca. No, silent.
It's the vagaries of the internet, isn't it?
It's astonishing the amount of problems that we have when we're on StreamYard. I don't think the StreamYard likes US, UK links.
But we
Perhaps
have such a special relationship, or so they keep telling us.
It's because we've kicked Boris Johnson out. You're kicking up a fuss now because both the idiots of the world have been taken out.
Now. Let's keep the politics off of the broadcast.
oh dear.
So anyway, Lisa is having extreme technical difficulties and can't get back in. I wanted her to read an extract of The Licorice Tree, her upcoming work, which hopefully will be out and in the wild by the end of this month. I'm 7 chapters into it, editing right now. The story is very compelling, and it's, to me, it's going to be another one of Lisa's masterpieces. So I'm looking forward to getting that out there. But as Rebecca has found out, there's a lot of work that goes into getting all the I's dotted and T's crossed to put out a book. The format's different for paperback and ebook. And the software that you have to use is considerably different. So, it is a time-consuming process that takes a lot more than just a quick gun. So.
You've got a Donald Duck echo.
I'm sorry?
You've got a Donald Duck echo. When you're speaking,
Still?
it's like there's a Donald Duck echo.
Still?
No, that's fine.
Okay, I'm moving closer to the microphone, throwing posture out the window and hunching over the camera. So anyway, we've been at this for almost an hour now. Does anybody else have anything that they want to talk about with regard to their books? I know, Rebecca, you will sit there and go into introvert mode on us. So, what about you, Lorna?
Well, I don't know much about the process of publishing. You know what I mean? I don't know how it works out. Do you come backwards and forwards to me about editing or?
Yes, ma'am. Constantly.
Okay.
Minor changes I just go ahead and make, mostly punctuation. Right.
Right.
But if it's something that I don't understand in the storyline, I will get in touch with you and say, hey, we need to rework this paragraph. And I've done, haven't I, Pat?
I've that to look forward to then.
Oh, yes, you do. You have to have a thick skin when you're an author.
Oh. Okay, I have quite a thick skin.
You also have to speak up for
Happened
yourself too.
Sorry.
No, at least we can hear you, Lorna.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what is happening,
I
but
think
it
it's
happens.
those spirits.
So.
I think those spirits
I
are
don't
in
think
your room.
spirits are like that's what it is.
It could be.
But I don't
Maybe,
think it likes
maybe
having
next
a
time we'll
bunch of
try.
people.
Maybe next time we'll try going native straight into Facebook Live or straight into YouTube. I'm still working on trying to figure out exactly how to do that because their documentation is not the greatest. So anyway, we'll wrap things up unless Sandy's got any more questions for us.
Yeah.
She's our only viewer at the moment.
I have to say goodbye.
So, all right. So anyway, this has been the
waking up.
Next. Sandy says thank you.
Thanks, Sandy, for watching.
So this has been the July edition of Monday Madness, brought to you by Lineage Independent Publishing. My name is Michael Hurd. With me today have been Patricia Donahue, writing under the nom de plume of G.B. Carmichael, Rebecca Conity Bruce, and Lorna Hart. Lisa Talbot was with us for a while, but had technical difficulties. And so we thank everybody for joining us, putting up with our banter and our technical issues that we can continue to have. So thank you for joining us, and have a good afternoon, evening, or whatever.
Thank you, and good night.
Goodbye.
Bye.